Hi guys, Andrea Flack-Wetherald here, talking once again about what you can do about a high performing bullies. This is a very common problem that people run into. There's someone that is hard to work with, but hard to fire, maybe because they are a really high performer, maybe because they've been at the company for a long time and kind of have a track record for really excelling in other areas, but they're mean, or in some other really critical way, they are undermining culture. And if you follow me here on LinkedIn, you know that I've been offering free webinars called Encouraging Change. There is one more opportunity to catch this free webinar at 4 p.m. today. So I'm new to StreamYard, but I did post the link to where you can read more about that webinar. It's a 1-hour webinar happening 4 p.m. Eastern time today, that's going to walk you through some of the best practices that social scientists have known for years and have been teaching in medical settings and in those who are working in the helping professions like social workers and such, to help people, help support their process of change, their process of behavior modification. So, there's a lot of people wondering, what do you do when you're stuck at this impasse with someone that is hard to work with, hard to fire? Maybe you're at the stage where you don't want to let them go. You want to find a way to support their journey of doing better. Maybe they've shown you indications that they want to get better, and you're trying to figure out, what can I be doing? Because so far, forcing them into trainings and giving them feedback and doing all these team building attempts is just not getting the results that we need. This change is not sustained. So if this sounds familiar to you, if this is resonating with you, I hope that you will take advantage of this webinar at 4 p.m. today. But right now, what I want to do is answer 2 questions that have come up from past webinar participants that I think are extremely important, and I'm quite sure they are not the only people wondering these questions. So the first question is, how can you convince someone above you that another person needs to be fired? So what I want to be clear is that the webinar at 4 p.m. today is going to be teaching you the best practices to really get the results that you need. If you are in a situation where you want to keep this person longer, where you can continue to build, whatever the situation is that this person is keepable, right? This person is coachable, and there's a path forward. But the question was coming up on the webinar, well, what do you do when that's not the case? What do you do when it is time to let this person go, but maybe you're not the decision maker? That's the first question I'm going to answer right now. And the second question is, how do you know when enough is enough? Maybe it's your call, maybe it's not, but maybe you're someone who can speak into that decision, and you're trying to be really heart-centered about, this is someone's career that we're talking about, or it's a big deal to let somebody go at all, let alone the fact that usually when people invest the time to come to a webinar, they're not talking about some person that they just hired last week. They're talking about someone who it's a big decision to let this person go. So how do you know when enough is enough? Let's say that you've been doing this, some of these best practices that I teach in the webinar, and you're like, okay, but we're still not getting there. When do you draw that line? So those are the 2 questions I'm going to be answering right now. So let's get started with the first one. How do you convince someone above you that it's time to fire someone who is a bully, or for whatever reason they are undermining culture? And you're like, listen, we know that we earn engagement and retention. I'm kind of getting into the answer already, because the first thing I think here is to make sure that you and whoever the decision maker are on the same page about why this is a problem, about what the stakes are of keeping this person. So I think it's really good to outline, first of all, if you haven't already, and we'll get into something a step further if you have done this, but level 0, let's make sure that we're on the same page of understanding that engagement and retention are earned by leaders being unwavering in how they stand behind their values, by leaders demonstrating that we care so much about having a safe, inclusive culture that even when it comes to this person that I went to college with, this person that co-founded the company with me, this person that has been here for forever, or whatever the case is, our kids play t-ball together. I've heard that from a client before, and it's awkward. There are maybe social politics involved that make it hard to hold this person accountable. But guess what? The way that you earn engagement and retention, and earn the enthusiasm and the loyalty and the bold ideas that help you actually build something that you're proud of, the way that you earn that from your team is by being unwavering in standing behind the values that you preach. It's not enough to buy everybody a book to read. It's not enough to, have the posters on the wall and have the right words on your website. Do you stand behind it when push comes to shove? And this is how you show people that you stand behind it. So making sure that you and whoever the decision maker are on the same page, that you are a culture-driven company and that you're going to lose people that you don't need to lose if you are not consistent, if you don't have continuity of culture, meaning you're not okay with it being good everywhere except Gary's department, right? Like you're on the same page that culture continuity is a priority. So, but let's say you've established that. That's level 0. You've established we are a culture-driven company. We stand behind our values consistently. The next thing I would do is have a conversation with leaders. And what I have done in the past is say things like, are you okay with saying that you only need one high performer? Because there is a real opportunity cost here in continuing to allow this person, regardless of their status, regardless of whatever the circumstances are, there's a real opportunity cost here of continuing to keep this person around when they are clearly deflating the culture of other people. So basically, every day that you continue telling the story that says, but look at their numbers, but look at how can it be a fiscally responsible decision to let this person go? The answer is, ask yourself, are we okay with having one high performer? Because every day that goes by and this person's behavior is acceptable, that's another day that goes by where you're spreading the message at your company that says, just one high performer for me, please. Because what if there are 3 or 4 or 5 other really high performers whose wings are being clipped by this deflating toxic energy? So that's been one way that I found to be helpful of communicating with the people who are trying to do a good job of keeping other people's jobs around. So understanding that if you come at that conversation from an angle that says, I care about culture and you don't, why is that happening? I shouldn't care more about culture than you do. I have heard very well-intentioned, very heart-centered HR directors say those words to me about the leaders. And my thing is, tap into the shared why. Don't assume that their persistence that this person is critical. Don't assume that that means that they're saying, I don't stand behind culture. Explore from their perspective, and meet them where they are. Their perspective is saying, we're not going to have jobs for everyone to servant lead if we don't have a company, if we are not, bringing in revenue. So understand that perspective. Understand the validity of the perspective that says this person is doing mission critical things at this company, and speak to them at that level. But what if there are people waiting in the wings that want to take on more of a leadership role, that want to expand and really grow, and they can't because this person is making it impossible for us to hear from them or for us to really see the way that other people are shining, okay? So in the world of mindful improv, which is the methodology that I created and that I teach for really creating culture continuity, I teach people about how that happens in the world of improv as well, and some of the key tactics that improvisers have to tap into for not letting one person take over and not letting one person run the whole show, which is what's happening when you have a high-performing bully kind of holding other people back. So that's what I would suggest, is using those kind of words. Don't come at it from a perspective that says leaders who are in favor of keeping this person around don't really care about culture, or it's nepotism, or there's a lot of words out there that maybe you might be factually true in some sense, but understand that going down this path of accusing leadership of not caring or accusing them of cultural negligence in some way, that's not going to get you where you want to be. Ultimately, what you want is to have a culture that consistently matches your values. Yes, I know that that's what you want. I hear that from so many of you all the time. So approaching from a standpoint that says, we share these values, and then point out the opportunity cost. Another thing that I found to be helpful, I heard these words recently from a coach that I have hired in my own life and has been very helpful for me, is this concept of cost sunk fallacy. So this might be another really good thing to bring up and kind of meet leadership where they are. So sometimes what happens is you've invested a lot of time and perhaps resources, money into this person through coaching or through training programs or whatever. And it's kind of hard to let someone go when you've invested so much time and resources and energy into them. And it feels like, well, now we just got to stick with it. We've already committed these resources. Are we really just going to let that go? So What I say to that in response to that is it's not a lost cause. Those resources that you invested in that person were not just invested in that person. They were invested in your culture. They were invested in your culture as a whole. And the effort that you went to re-engage, the effort that you went to stand behind your values, other people saw that too. That wasn't just about that person. That was about you saying, we care whether or not our company is legitimately emotionally safe. We care about whether or not our company is legitimately inclusive. That's what you were doing by investing in that person. You invested in your culture as a whole. So there's not this cost that you're losing by letting someone go who is actively poisoning the water hole. In fact, there are all kinds of opportunity costs of keeping this person around that are worth exploring. So that's my advice to you if you are someone who is a heart-centered culture advocate, but it's not your final say whether or not you keep someone around. That's what I would do. Question number 2, how do you know when enough is enough? How do you decide, okay, this is the final line in the sand? And so this is where I think it's important to point out that the trans-theoretical model, which is the framework that you'll be learning in the webinar at 4 p.m. if you decide to join us. And I hope that you do. I really hope that you do. There's some really helpful best practices to know about if you want to support someone's change journey. But that framework, that trans-theoretical framework and the motivational interviewing model that I kind of touch on at a high level, those are based on the assumption that we are keeping someone around, that there is room to grow still. They're based on the assumption that what's happened to this point is well-intentioned leaders not knowing some very critical steps in the process of supporting behavior change. There are some ways that really well-intentioned leaders get it wrong kind of across the board in my experience. And so it's when those things are rectified, they're able to make more progress with this person. So, but maybe you're saying you get to the end of this webinar and you're like, yeah, we've kind of been doing that stuff though, Andrea. And, we're just at this place where this person is not making the progress that we need to see. So someone reached out to me and sent me this very heartfelt email after the last webinar, kind of explaining a little bit more about their situation. And what I said to her is that at the end of the day, there is not a rubric. There is not a chart that you can point to and be like, this is the number of strikes before we have to let someone go. The reality is you need to ask yourself this important question. Do I like who I am as a leader while I wait? Secondly, do I like what my culture is at this company while we wait for this person to change? And if not, if you have truly been working the steps that I'm teaching, if you have truly been sticking to this evidence-based model for coaching behavior modification and you're still not seeing results, at the end of the day, it's time for a heart-centered conversation with this person that's like, are you getting what you need out of this job? Are you getting what you need? Because don't tell yourself a story that you letting this person go is you giving up on them or you ruining their life or their career or something like that, because that's not how it works. If you have truly been working these steps with this person and holding them accountable at a heart level for real, and you haven't been seeing the results, then it is safe to have a real conversation with them that says, hey, change is not happening at the pace that we need in order to stand behind our values. And we are needing something from you that you don't have the emotional bandwidth to do right now. So what would it be like for you to be on a sabbatical and really pursue some of the, maybe, now I would only recommend saying this if they have suggested in your integrated plan making, which is something that we talk about in the training, if they have outlined treatments or behavior intervention plans or whatever that would require a sabbatical like this. So that's kind of a specific thing in a couple specific situations that had been brought to my attention. But the point is having a heart-centered conversation that says, are you getting what you need out of this? Because perhaps what could happen is that this person takes some time away to do the more intensive work that they need to do to lead at the caliber of their potential consistently. And so if they're able to do a sabbatical, that's one option. If it's really the reality that they need to be let go, you need to know in a real way that even though you are a heart-centered leader, even though you care so deeply about this person, it's not the case that you could make a decision that's right for the culture that is wrong for this leader. That's not how it works. That's not how it works at the level of deep truth, where we acknowledge what's really happening for someone to grow and be the best that they can be. It doesn't work like a seesaw, like, oh, I do the thing that is at a heart level right for our culture, and then this person just loses out. It might be a gift that they wouldn't have chosen for themselves, but at the end of the day, the growth that is available to them when they are not in a culture that's saying, you need to change right now, that might be putting some pressure on them that they just can't handle, and is maybe making it harder for them to work through the stages of change. So that's one perspective to consider. But at the end of the day, the answer to when is enough enough, the answer is, do you like who you are as a leader while you wait? If your honest evaluation of the situation is that you are not standing in your integrity and you are allowing people to be bullied, you are allowing people to be made unsafe emotionally, you are allowing the questions to arise about, like, is this harassment? If you are getting that kind of feedback from your team and you're honest in your heart, when it is you and the universe at the end of the day on your drive home, you are like, I do not like the person that I am right now. I do not like the culture that I am tolerating right now. Then enough is enough. Then that's how you know. So it's a heart-centered answer. And I know that it's hard because I know that there are a lot of people that really want there to be a rubric. And that's the reason why progressive discipline exists. And that's the reason why the strike system exists. And that's the reason why a lot of really well-intentioned HR folks and servant leaders are relying on these models of holding people accountable that, in my opinion, don't really get to the root source of the problem. And that's what the trans-theoretical model exists to do, to really get to the soul-centered level of what does it take to make a change sustainable? How can we as heart-centered leaders support that change process? That's what these models exist to do. So all of this is to say, I know it's a heart-centered answer, and sometimes we would rather have a chart or a graph. All I can say about that is that at the bare minimum, there is a level of, are we headed towards a lawsuit or aren't we? But my hope and my understanding is that most of you are beyond the place at your culture where you would truly let, an illegal situation happen. And more likely than not, there's this weird gray area where you're like, this is not what I want to be about. This is not the kind of person that I want to be on this earth. This isn't the type of company that I want to build. This isn't the type of team that I want to build. And so you're asking a more heart-centered question anyway, even if maybe you wouldn't use those words or hadn't thought to use those words heart-centered before. So I hope that those answers are helpful. I know that there are a lot of you asking those questions. If you are wondering, is there any chance that there's something I could be doing differently? Is there any chance that I could be supporting this person's change process more effectively and maybe getting some better results? I really hope that you will join us at 4 p.m. I'm going to post, how StreamYard works is that I can't post comments on this thing right now, but I'm going to go into LinkedIn once this is done, and I'll post the link in the comments and make sure you have it. But I really hope that you will join us for that webinar, because there's a really good chance that there's just some understandings that you haven't had access to before about how to coach more effectively, how to help this person get to a place where they are in alignment, where they are actively, willfully participating in the problem identification and solution finding process, where a change is actually attempted and where a new set of behaviors can actually be maintained over the long run. Those are the outcomes that the trans-theoretical model seeks to achieve. So I hope you'll join us at 4 p.m. I'll post that link in the comments. Last opportunity to do that free webinar, Encouraging Change, is at 4 p.m. today. Thank you guys so much for watching this. Thank you guys for doing the work of building cultures that represent your values. Leaders like you who are watching this and who are attending the webinar, you guys give me hope for what we are coming back to when quarantine is over and when we are returning to work in a more consistent, I know some people are kind of starting already, but leaders like you guys are helping me really believe that a new normal is possible. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing. It matters a whole lot. It matters a whole lot, the work that you're doing to build healthy, thriving places of work for your team. So thank you so much. All right, you guys, let's make it a really good day. Bye.